Mr. President, today, every single
What's
time we've
immediate?
had a threat, the threat has been delivered upon. We need to decide what we can do about that threat.
Suggesting we take them out. Essentially, we strike Iran, which would...
War.
Yeah, it is war.
Yeah.
Our response to crisis is in some ways more important than the crisis itself, particularly against a context of tremendous fear.
People are already panicking. There's flames going up in the streets, and so...
All we can say for sure is that it's a bomb.
He's just one guy, and we're talking about thousands of Americans being blown up.
There's some information that would make it seem that a suicide bomber detonated a bomb in Times Square. So we need to definitely do what we did in Baltimore. We need to contact people in New York, get the situation under control, dispatch emergency personnel, find out what happened, what actually happened, get all the intelligence you can, and then find out what we need to do to proceed in the future.
The simulation exercises that I will be conducting has an interesting history. I conducted them while I was serving in the Israel Defense Forces. And then when I came to American academia 6 years ago, I began doing these at Case Western. This is now the third year at the University of Utah. It takes the course over the course of a number of hours, and it presents a great educational opportunity for the students.
The human brain evolved in a way where we learn through experience. And what we're trying to do is to stimulate and simulate that experience through the simulation so that law students get a sense of what it's like to make decisions when life and liberty are at stake.
This complicated confluence, how easy it is to criticize decision makers, and then once you're actually in the shoes of the decision maker, how what you see on from this side of the table isn't what you see from that side of the table. I think that the most important thing that I can do as the teacher is to sensitize students to what I call the dilemma of the decision maker. Some of you will complain afterwards, and the best defense is a good offense, are going to complain to me afterwards about the following. We did not have enough information during the course of the simulation exercise to respond fully, appropriately, and in detail to things we were asked. My response to that, you're going to hear it now, and you'll hear it again when you complain, is that's right.
There's really nothing that's more topical right now than counterterrorism. It's something that has evolved on a weekly, monthly, year-by-year basis in terms of the United States' strategy towards counterterrorism. And then behind that, you have this whole question of what is legal? What does the law have to say about this? And that is a situation that is not tremendously well developed.
The simulation is in the context of a course that I teach. And it enables their implementation of what we've been talking about during the semester. One of the enhancers is that it forces them to play a role, because each student is assigned a role that I decide, who will play what. So Brian, you're the president.
Darn it. Okay. Do we have to go through some kind of election process?
I elected you.
Oh, okay.
You are the Attorney General of the United States of America during the course of the simulation exercise.
Fantastic.
You are going to be the mayor of the city of Baltimore. You're the press secretary of the President of the United States. You're the Secretary of State. So you are the chief of police of New York.
Sweet.
Sweet. And it forces them to understand their role, to prepare for that role, to study that role, and also to understand teamwork.
So that students really get a real live sense of how leaders respond to counterterrorism episodes and the kinds of things that they have to balance and the kinds of considerations that come into play in those real life episodes.
Thinking that it might have been a hijacking, but they don't know for sure. They can't even determine if it's a plane that caused it yet, but
Was it aerial?
They don't know.
They need to make decisions with imperfect information. They need to do it very quickly. They need to do it in a teamwork fashion, and while receiving constantly during the course of the exercise new information, some of it information, some of it disinformation, some of it misinformation, and somehow trying to integrate all that in a cohesive fashion.
And Israel is saying something in the opposite, so we have two conflicting
The Russians
sources.
are trying to use you for their media campaign.
They have to be sensitive to domestic law, to international law, to constitutional principles, and the interaction between local government, state government, national government, and also, because we have foreign players, foreign countries involved in this, Students have to understand geopolitics.
If Israel attacks Damascus, then it's really going to be a full-fledged war. And as you said, Russia will be involved, and I don't see how the United States will not be involved at that point.
Scenarios that we have absolutely are realistic and reflect contemporary terrorism simulations and scenarios, and absolutely reflect what the administration in the United States and other governments need to respond to today on a daily basis.
Professor Giora is the orchestra leader, or the conductor of the simulation. But we have many other people involved.
It's an effort between a tremendous amount of people. People that have to coordinate and have to plan and have to come up with a realistic scenario and find out the technology and how do we make the technology work and who do we bring in.
The entire production team, including the students, includes 60 people, both on-site, off-site. We have the virtual participants from the National Defense University. We have experts from Salt Lake City who will be, in many ways, role-playing themselves. We have a sheriff, we have U.S. attorneys, we have a policeman, we have the reporter.
The simulation that the university is conducting is one that prepares a variety of students for real-world experience. Anything we can do in law enforcement to promote that experience base, we're very committed to doing.
We have a number of student reporters who are being trained by a reporter from the Salt Lake Tribune, Matt LaPlante, who's taken it upon himself to work intensively with student reporters. They are coming here, frankly speaking, not to be nice to you. They're coming here as people who see themselves as reporters and to be aggressive with you. That's just the way it is.
In addition, we have our audience. And our audience plays the role of asking questions, blogging, commenting, viewing, and participating, albeit from a distant virtual location.
And one of our hopes is, just like last year, we had over 2,000 people watching worldwide through the dashboard.
So what the dashboard allows people to do is it gives you a sort of window into the school and what's going on the day of the simulation. We have a camera in each room where the visitors can actually watch and listen to what's going on in that room. Okay, so by clicking on any of the rooms, they can actually be there in a better way than if you were actually there physically.
That's one of the unique aspects of this, is that somebody sitting wherever can ask us questions and we'll get online information, responses. So the whole point from our perspective is to have engagement from those who are watching us. Rather than passive watching, you can be actively engaged in the process. We are able to work in so many different scenarios because of technology. We're able to make it extremely realistic. We have the dummied newscasts. We have information coming in through various technical means. We have the ability to link people together.
With sort of taking technology and really making it a focal point of these simulations, not technology for technology's sake, but technology to really enhance and improve what the simulation is for the students.
What's up, dude?
What is happening?
Just getting stuff ready.
So the day of the simulation comes. In the morning, we're actually setting up for our dashboard. We're setting up all the video cameras and all the angles. But the day of the simulation, when it actually starts at noon, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Here's what you're being, frankly, tested on, but certainly examined on. One is the level of your preparation. So if you haven't prepared, too late. This is not the time to be passive. You must be proactive. You must be proactive, both thinking tactically and thinking strategically. Again, from those four perspectives: law, policy, intelligence, and operational considerations. Keep in mind, while this is a simulation, that at some point people get a little bit irritated with each other. There are external pressures that will be placed on you throughout. How you deal with that is how you deal with it. When you get to your room, the first thing you must do, and do it very quickly, open your computers and refresh the website. Because precisely at 12:30, we begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the President of the United States. Thank you. Please be seated.
Off you go. Go, 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 go.
The way it began was watching just a news broadcast that, just like any other news channel, it's just some talking head, and then they cut them off, and then they show, live on the scene, all this mayhem, destruction going on.
Yes, yeah. I'm at the Port of Baltimore. A big section of the shipyards just went up in flames. People are running everywhere. A lot of people are dead. A lot of people are injured. There's debris and smoke everywhere.
Okay, so just to clarify, we had an explosion in Baltimore in the shipyards. Shipyards are on fire. We've received some information that a lot of people are dead, injured. It could have been an airplane or a helicopter. Also, Iran has mounted some troops in Syria. Israel is thinking that they're going to invade, and a war could ensue between the nations.
And it goes crazy from there. Students they have no idea what to do. They're calling, they're starved for information, they're trying to find things out. But they're actually panicking, they feel nervous, their hearts are racing, and that's the best part of it, is that you know that you've captured them and you've got them in that situation.
And just right from the get-go, we were really in the thick of things, and I didn't feel that we ever were out of the thick of things.
Anybody who can, we have another video update. So
there's been an attack in New York.
And what did you say happened? Okay, a blast from a passenger bus.
Boom. Subway.
And throughout the day, we have to figure out, first of all, what intelligence is accurate, and how are we going to make sure that we're getting the right information, how much information is enough for us to act on it, and when do we have enough information to do something with that intelligence, or whether we need to wait and hold off and see if something's going to happen.
Because there's only so much interaction and information they can get on their own between themselves, we need to bring in what we're calling shadow players to play the periphery roles.
Okay, so you're looking for a legal opinion about deputizing the National Guard?
Or if you're worrying about shipping that's already been offloaded, that would fall under the Baltimore Port Authority.
All we can say for sure is that it's a bomb.
Again, it's hazy at this point. He is divulging intelligence.
We found it necessary to find people in the community, find some law professors with experience who can play these sort of periphery roles to interact with the students on this other level.
What I'm saying is that's not an excuse. That's not like a get out of jail free card. So you can't say to me, we have obligations to Israel, so we have to back them up, sorry. Well, then guess what? Then we have to back up Syria.
We have to sort of react to what the students are doing, again, to make it more real.
Well, the president is supposed to, I just called him as the Israeli prime minister and told him that, I wanted to order airstrikes or not within 10 minutes. And that I wanted his support, so I'm waiting for him to call me back. He seems to be having kind of a hard time making a decision on this.
So we knew that going in, that whatever we'd scripted, that was just sort of an outline, and the students would really carry the simulation, and that we would need to be able to adapt to those kind of things on the fly.
And what you're doing is you're tying my hands. You're not letting me follow this up. Sir, we got thousands of American lives here. I'm telling you, it'll take 4 minutes and we can get some information from this guy.
The thing that we don't want to do is have students for a second feel like, oh, this is just a simulation. They don't take it as seriously.
My role in the counterterrorism simulation, I was responsible for our simulated news network. My goal was to create as realistic a news experience as possible for the students. We wanted it to be immersive and familiar. We didn't want it to feel like a simulated news site. I'm also going to be working with Matt LaPlante, a reporter from the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm going to be down with them in the simulated newsroom that we have.
Okay, the site, the scene, what's going on, how it happened, who's investigating.
My role in the counterterrorism simulation was to lead a bureau of student journalists who were acting as journalists who were covering the events of the day as they unfolded. And what ends up happening, and this happens in a real crisis situation as well, which made it all the more real, is that the world leaders, the leaders, I should say, in the simulation start responding to what they see in the press.
They're pushing us to go to torture, and I'm not going there.
Who's they?
The public.
The press. They want ramping up.
One of the things that we include in the context of the simulation are press conferences. Press conferences force those who will be subject to the media, and we are very fortunate here to have student reporters. They're going to be forced to articulate their principles, and if we can do that through a press conference and force them to answer difficult questions, I think from a learning perspective, educational perspective, I think it's an invaluable lesson to learn.
Are we not at war, Mr. President?
We are not.
We're still not at war. The United States has been attacked on
Four
occasions today.
What do you term? What is your definition of war?
What is your definition? What are you interviewing us? We're interviewing
You're the
you.
president.
It was fascinating to see how they would twist our words and, you know, make us look good or bad depending on how they wanted us to feel.
To see what our people are going through? This guy's a lunatic. Update, let's go.
But I mean, that's the reality of it. It forced us to give very distinctive answers and very strong definitions on what we were planning to do and what our policy was going to be.
I'm sure that some people would rather not have that extra element to have to think about, to have to deal with, but the truth of the matter is that the media plays an incredibly essential and powerful role in any time of crisis, and so it does make this whole simulation more realistic.
You can't address this question right now. You challenged the Senate Minority Leader. You challenged the Senate Minority Leader to address the questions, and you won't, Mr. President.
The media is not forgiving, and it shouldn't be forgiving, particularly not in the time of crisis.
All right, here's our story, okay? President of the United States has said there's been success by averting one potential attack source, ignored the fact in the press conference that he's presided over the largest mass casualty situation in United States history.
The media itself was an amazing component for us because it gave us the reality to keep us into the role that we otherwise would not have had without them.
There's another situation, kind of a funny situation, in which I think my reporters got on the nerves of the mayor of Baltimore.
I had been receiving phone calls from the press like every 10 minutes or so to give different comments or quotes or ask about different things. And so I thought it'd be fun to call the press and harass them and ask them what the weather would be like.
So when the mayor of Baltimore calls a newsroom demanding to know what the weather is like in his home city, you know, the assumption is he's cracked a little.
It was interesting because my dad was sitting right next to me, and he's a licensed psychologist, has been for many years. So I sent him down there, and he sort of assessed the mayor of Baltimore and determined that he might not be completely capable to lead.
And so we had a little fun with that until we wrote this story about the mayor of Baltimore losing his faculties. I felt bad for the guy actually because it was just a moment of frustration. I think he was just having a little fun with it. But in the minds of my reporters, I think in the minds of everybody in the simulation, this is very something that everybody wanted to take very seriously.
So that created a big scandal where the mayor of Baltimore had to face the media and answer some hard questions.
Can you explain your comment about harassing us?
Oh, I was just joking.
You were joking at a time of national panic, national disaster, a time in which hundreds of people from your city, a time in which a nuclear bomb exploded in your city. You were just joking with our network? Okay, thank you for that.
And so it was an interesting little twist, kind of comical, but also really true to life.
Well, we've created this little world, this scenario, almost like a video game. And then we've set it up to perform in certain ways, but we have no idea how it's going to go.
I have learned that the writers of the simulation for this year were not really prepared for the decisions we made.
One of the major issues that we have right now is how to treat our detainees, the people that we have, how to treat them as far as interrogation techniques.
We created a situation where at the very end the students were able to capture one of the terrorists alive. Not only alive, but he had one of the mini nukes in the trunk of his car. We thought that they would go ahead and just do what it took to get information, and that's not what they did at all.
So the FBI director just instructed me to stop interrogating the guy who we caught with the nuclear bomb in his trunk until they decide what paradigm we're going to use for interrogations.
They didn't want to go beyond what they felt was the constitutional limits of interrogation. So I thought that was a really big game changer in that we weren't prepared for that.
Awesome.
He's got a nuke in his f***ing trunk and they're talking about building a case against the guy. Like, what do you... So it was an interesting thing, and it was a situation where we had to adapt on the fly ourselves to make the simulation continue to flow. The media has some inflammatory information that we have a suspect in custody that has information about today's attacks that could stop the attacks, and that just enough isn't being done about it.
Okay.
Both my fault.
Okay.
In addition to this, the mayors from Baltimore and I think New York City, where the attacks occurred, had both issued separate statements questioning the president's communication, the administration's communication with their municipalities. And one of the things I think these students learn is that there's really no right answers. A lot of times you're going to be drawn into a corner, and you make the best choices you can in the situation, but there's sometimes not good choices to be made.
Although this was just a simulation, although we were just playing a role, it wasn't acting in that we were really talking to another human being, and we were serious about what we needed to do, and we had our objectives and they had theirs, and many times those were in conflict.
I guess there's just a certain amount of realism that it does change the way people react. That being said, though, I think we did generally respect the situation. We really were trying to do the best that we could, and to put an appropriate level of seriousness into it. Some people put more seriousness into it than others, just in terms of heightened tensions and things like that. But I think all that is fairly realistic.
The worst moment was pretty much off and on through the whole 8 hours. But at the very end, when they blew up Chicago on us, that really kind of destroyed our morale.
This just in, we are receiving reports of an enormous explosion in downtown Chicago, the magnitude of which indicates the unthinkable. A nuclear bomb has been detonated on American soil. The extent of the destruction leaves little doubt that thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, are dead.
Good evening, everyone. I've come before you tonight to report about a very unfortunate and tragic event that has occurred in the city of Chicago. We received word that a nuclear weapon has been detonated in the city of Chicago.
In the moment, when we're all wrapped up in the emotions and the exhaustion of the day, it becomes really personal. And at the end, when the bomb went off in Chicago, I think that we really felt that. I think that we really felt saddened by that.
I would like to think that everybody now has a better idea of what it is, how hard it is to make decisions. So it looks easy, it looks effortless, but in real life, man, it's hard. I want to give you an interesting statistic. At 10 to 7 tonight, we were watched in the United States by 2,310 people. In Israel, 16. India, 10. France, 5. New Zealand, 4. And Italy, 2. Do the time difference by yourselves, and you understand that people are watching us and have stayed with us throughout. And that is a testament to how hard you guys prepared yourselves and how people were interested and engaged in this. And so I want to truly thank all of you for making this great effort and for buying into the idea of the simulation. And I really want to thank all of you. Have a great spring vacation.
They say that experience is something that you get after you need it. Well, the simulation is an attempt to sort of reverse that.
Critical decision making cannot be achieved in a clinical environment. You have to get out into a situation in which there are real pressures.
We hope that students will gain an experience that sophisticates them about the difficulty of making such an experience. And as they go into their professional lives, whether it's in counterterrorism or other fields, that they bring the emotional resources and the intellectual resources that they gain from the simulation to those, however different, crises.
I think it helps prepare you for the fact that you're never going to have enough evidence, you're never going to have enough information, but you're going to have to make arguments, you're going to have to make decisions based on what you're presented with.
And the overwhelming response is what an extraordinary experience it was and how much they learned both about the law, about morality, about operational considerations, and also, frankly, about themselves. It really is experiential learning at its very best. I can safely say that we are the only law school in the United States that does this kind of very sophisticated, multiple scenario, technology-based simulation exercise. My take on this at all times is next year needs to be bigger, better, more exciting than this year, fully with the understanding that we really are the nation's leaders in this field.